Hi, everybody, and welcome to a MasterControl webinar, right first time, the 5 pillars that make or break manufacturing excellence. My name is George Hall. I'm one of the senior solution consultants here covering the EMEA region. I've been doing this for a long time now. I think I had hair when I started. It's kind of slowly fallen down my face. I've been doing this for 16, 17 years, covering various industries. But these days, life is a lot less stressful and I just press buttons. But I have been an auditor and I've been product manager for electronic solutions as well. And Erik, if you don't mind introducing yourself, but Erik is my co-presenter today.
Yeah, hi. So I joined MasterControl not that long ago, but before that, I've been in industry. So I come from 7 years of medical device manufacturing. I've been in operational excellence, and I actually implemented MasterControl, the MX solution, as well as its legacy system, which was replaced by MasterControl in my former role in a global multi-site setup in the regulated industries of medical devices. So I know where you are right now, and yeah, let's go forward.
Fantastic. Thanks, Erik. That basically means any difficult questions that come through, I'll let Erik answer because he's implemented. Just before we move on, a couple of housekeeping items. If you do need any assistance during today's broadcast, there is a chat function. So please feel free to use that. Send us a message. It's at the bottom of your screen, and we'll work to resolve any issues. Also, if you have any questions, there is a Q&A function at the bottom as well. So please use that to ask us any questions as we go through. If we see the questions, we'll answer them as they come through, but we also have a dedicated time at the end for Q&A. So that's housekeeping. Let's discuss the purpose of today's webinar. I guess what we're kind of trying to cover off here in that in life sciences, failure at the manufacturing stage is more than a business problem. It can have a real impact on patient safety, patient access to life-changing products. And we know through everybody we speak to, and I'm sure Erik can vouch for this, everybody is striving for 100% order fulfillment on time at the right quantity, at the right quality. Um, right first time is, I guess you could call it the North Star metric. It's what everybody's aiming for. And it's the single outcome that kind of rolls up your speed and efficiency, your quality, your compliance into one number. But we know the reality is that there's many manufacturers still fighting manual, disconnected, paper-based processes. You've got spreadsheets, you've got PDFs, you've got documents lying around. We've got operators still transcribing data by hand. And you may even have reviewers having to read 200 pages or more batch records line by line because they're simply having to scan every line for what's gone wrong. QA and operations often work from different data sources as well, and there's lots of systems that don't talk to each other. So the goal of today, hopefully, is to show you which capabilities will close these gaps and what it looks like in practice, hopefully. And that kind of takes us to our 5 pillars that we feel drive right first time. Um, I mean, you can read the screen from 1 to 5. We're looking for enforced process control, basically stopping things going wrong before they can. Smart automation. We don't want people having to write or transcribe anymore. So we're talking things like barcode scanning or typing a number and pulling in data from an ERP. Review by exception. Coming back to having to read 200 pages. Why don't you just read what's gone wrong? And that could really reduce things for you. Connected manufacturing, so one source of the truth across all of your different systems, and continuous improvement, which we're all kind of striving for anyway, where we're going to look at the data that's being created and how it can turn into decisions to kind of help us where we're going. But I mean, it's a lovely picture. What happens when a pillar fails? Well, if we think of the first one, which was no process control, steps could be completed out of sequence. People could get involved that haven't done training. Deviations could be caught too late. Maybe you're only finding these things out at the end. The second one, the lack of automation. Well, manual work does introduce errors. We're all familiar with this. We could be transcribing a very long serial number and we get one digit wrong and it can have consequences. And that could end up delaying release when we find this out and have to kind of cross-reference everything. The lack of review by exception. Well, QA sometimes can spend days reviewing records line by line, and it really stretches the release cycle to weeks. We really want to help you reduce that. No connectivity. Your critical applications work in silos. Data is reconciled in spreadsheets. It's difficult to find what we need or where it even might be located. And then the kind of lack of analytics really leads to the fact that we may have recurring issues going undetected. And every deviation might feel like it's the first time something's been deviated from. But in reality, because we've got that lack of analytics, it might happen every week. It might happen the same day every week, and we just don't know why. So we're hoping these 5 pillars, we can kind of show you how we can remove them. Erik, is there anything you'd kind of add just from your experience about how some of these issues or some of these pillars could fail from your experience implementing MasterControl?
Yeah, the biggest problem with paper processes or paper-based batch records is that the mistakes or the errors are recorded on paper and it's not controlled in any way. So paper won't complain if you enter the wrong value or if you miss a step. It will be found, hopefully, in the review sometime later. We heard of cases where reviews took weeks to months in some cases. In my former role, it was several hours, and the review only happened when everything has been done. And the review had to be done before we were allowed to sell the products. Nonetheless, the error has been done. So the very first pillar, the to prevent errors in the first place and to alert the operators already in the shop floor whenever the issue appears is one of the biggest benefits. You can't put a number on, most likely, because you're not aware how many errors or bad batches may have been avoided if errors or problems in manufacturing would have been highlighted in real time in the shop floor at the moment where they actually happen. And
if these things were to kind of slip through undetected, because I appreciate manually it's obviously going to be a lot of pages that we're looking at. What kind of impact was that potentially having where you were previously, or you've heard from customers?
Yeah, the next biggest thing is actually the data transparency. So you can record whatever. If you don't use the data, it's siloed somewhere. And if something happens, a kappa or just a deviation where you want to find out if this is maybe systematic or not, the investigation starts and you have to browse thousands of documents and maybe even Excel spreadsheets, but even those aren't smart. And you start firefighting without ever getting ahead of the curve. And with a system actually using data, you can you can see trends even before it becomes an actual problem. Just assume maybe there are use cases where you only have 2 operators and they're working next to each other and everything is fine. But if you have a shop floor with 30, 40, 50 operators doing steps in similar products, they talk to each other, but not about each and every step. And if you have a trend appearing over all your products, it's absolutely invisible until the first one actually fails. If your data is tracked and trended, you will see those trends before batches go bad or before tests fail. And this is something completely invisible if you're not connected.
Perfect. Well, let's move on to just talking a little bit more around the enforced process control, which you kind of referenced there. Um, Obviously, we can embed some of these guardrails. We can put a lot of preventative measures into software-driven solutions, whereas manually, you're really relying on somebody noticing, oh, that's not quite right. Maybe I should tell the supervisor, or whatever, especially in the kind of paper or disconnected environments. And I think you referenced nothing's going to stop an operator from maybe entering step one and then jumping to step 10 and skipping a lot of kind of critical parts. And the errors only kind of pop up when it's often too late. What we bring with our solution is those kind of inline alerts and conditional logic. So depending on what you enter, certain people could be notified, like you referenced, Erik. We've got required field enforcement and sequencing. So if you really need to go from step one to step two to step three, we can enforce that. And we're also doing training checks. So if your operators maybe haven't read a policy or procedure or answered some questions, sat some kind of quiz or exam, they won't be able to work. And that's at the point of execution. So we're ensuring that they know what they should be doing. And obviously, with any kind of computer software solution out there, everything is captured. The time, date, user stamp, the audit trail is immutable, cannot be changed, and can prove or help prove that we followed every step. I mean, it's an interesting statistic, Erik. Over 50% of pharma manufacturing deviations are linked to human error or process non-adherence. Is there anything you can add at this stage?
Yeah, just imagine if you have more complex processes or even simpler processes where multiple operators are working in and yeah, one, two, three, four. How many departments or steps in production may be involved? If in phase two of whatever production process you have, the connection is a value which has been, for example, calculated or measured in phase one. The operator in phase two can do everything 100% correct. If the data he started with is wrong and has an issue, he won't see something going wrong until he is done and the value is not as expected. If, like in our example, the system does the calculations for the system checks beforehand if the value is as expected, you prevent those follow-up errors which are recognized way too fast. So the human factor, that's not being not professional or not trained enough. It's just human. Yeah, you make typos in your calculations. You may even calculate wrong. If you're doing it 1,000 times a day, even if your error rate is at 0.1%, you do one error a day, and this can mess up a batch. So those human errors, that's not bad training or bad operators, that's human. And not following the process. Oftentimes you have an invisible, a hidden factory. Operators have so much experience that they know exactly how, with best intentions, how something is faster, or it always will succeed if I do it that way. I do step three before I do step two. And they do it with their best intentions, but there's a reason why the process is designed like that. And if it's really better to do step three before you do step two, then they talk to the subject matter expert who designed the process, and they just can discuss, but they're not doing it invisible to the responsible persons, subject matter experts, and authors. So,
and that kind of leads into change management process as well, doesn't it? Like every organization should have those steps in place for employee suggestions because they might be correct. Maybe the subject matter expert isn't as close to things because they're not on the shop floor making these things. So, but it has to be done formally. As you said, it cannot just be done informally. And I always think when something says human error, how far down the rabbit hole have we gone there from a root cause perspective? Is it just human error? They've got to that level and not gone further? Because as you said, Erik, there's always a lot more to it than just human error. We all make mistakes, but why are we making these mistakes? Is it training? Is it other things? So Yeah, I appreciate that. Let's go to the next slide to cover the second pillar, which is our smart automation. And is one of the biggest source of errors and operator times being wasted in manufacturing. You've already referenced calculations a few times, Erik, like these are done by hand. I'll hold my hands up. I am not the best at mathematics. That's why I use a calculator. So I mean, I know these operators will be using calculators as well. They're not going to likely be working some of these sums out in their head, but there's still room for error. And as you said, if you've made a mistake at the beginning, you can still do the subsequent steps correctly, but it's just based on incorrect data. And we kind of help with that through the automation of calculations and executing these formulas. We can have barcodes and QR scanning, so we can pick materials off a shelf from one of our pick bins, scan it. If it matches, perfect, we'll get the details through. And we can also connect to smart devices like scales, temperature sensors, etc. And I mean, it's really just to help remove the human from kind of high risk and low value data entry when you think about it. And it's not about replacing operators. It's actually just about freeing them up to the tasks that create the most risk and the least value to kind of help mitigate against those things. And up
Yeah.
to 80% of manual data entries could be automated. Sorry, Erik, did you have something to add?
Yeah, that's actually even better. Better point to add that you're not paying or hiring your operators who are most likely highly trained and experienced to fill out paper in the nicest way possible. You pay them to do their job, to be in the lab, in the shop floor, to produce something, to tune something, to um, do whatever tasks is necessary with their training, their expertise, what they are hired for, and not to make sure that a piece of paper is filled out correctly. So whenever you can save their time in filling out just the history of what they already did, and make room for actually performing. It's not just that your documentation is getting better and your data is becoming visible. You're actually taking a task from their shoulders, which is nothing but busy work for them because
Yeah,
they have the expertise. You can guide them and everything, of course, but filling out the record of what they already did is just for
yeah,
others. That's not helping them. And
yeah,
with a system which pulls in data automatically, calculates automatically, none of the operators is a highly trained calculator. They are lab technicians or whatever.
yeah.
They're not hired to be a calculator. Yeah, and this, yeah, that's the
Yeah.
deal here.
Even the simplest thing of not having to write your name or initial something frees up a lot of time when you think how many data entries could be made, Erik. So
Yeah,
it's definitely a thing that can be improved.
our in my former role, our shop floor operators liked me really much. Not when I did the following. I ran around in the shop floor with a stopwatch and checked on average. I told them what I'm doing, how long it takes the average operator to write down his signature and the recent date. And this may sound ridiculous, but it's like 4 seconds on average.
Okay.
Especially on Mondays or beginning of the year, you check the date twice, stuff like that. And even if it takes only 4 seconds per step per data they put in, they in especially in pharma or in some regulated industries, you're not even allowed to make a cross for yes and no. You have to write down yes and no.
Yep.
That's another 2 seconds. So if this is done 1,000 times, that's 1,000 times 4 seconds. And now you have
Yeah.
30, 40, 50 operators in your factory or more. Yeah, do the numbers yourself and multiply it
Yeah.
by the hourly rate you set up in your calculations for operations. And
It
you're
definitely
getting
adds up.
some numbers there. So it's aside from the data quality and the correct at first time, it's pure money in the end.
It's a huge time sink that automation can obviously help you with. So the next pillar is the review by exception. We've already kind of discussed this a little bit in that you could be looking over a 200-page document or more, because we do know people have more than that, and they're looking line by line for that kind of one value that's not correct, that signature that's missing, that field that's not being completed. I mean, QA are really looking at everything, um, and it can kind of artificially increase or stretch the release cycle to days or weeks, and we want that to be a lot quicker. Where we can help is obviously around the automated exception flagging. As soon as a value is out of specification, notifications can be sent. We can get real-time batch status and review across dashboards. We can configure risk classes for exception prioritization. So if something goes wrong at this particular area, we notify a group of people, and we've got structured review workflows. So we know when things need looked at, people are told, and we can jump through that process. And that's what review by exception is. It's obviously surfacing only the exceptions, any deviations, out of spec entries and flags. So reviewers are spending their time on what matters, not on confirming what went right. I mean, if you want, you could surface those critical points, even if they meet specification or 100% correct. We can still surface them, but the majority is what's gone wrong and is it going to impact the release. And we found actually that the review by exception could reduce a 150-page batch record review to a 3-page exception report and a release time reduction of up to 90%. I know that's a large figure. Erik, anything particular around you could add in this area?
I can absolutely confirm the number. In my former company, we went down from a couple of hours to a couple of minutes. But the records have not been that complex. Nonetheless, it's a massive change. And the other thing which is good, that most of the issues that have been found in reviews are not actual manufacturing problems, but issues in the documentation. So it is a date missing, a signature here. Even if a product is perfectly fine, it is a
Yeah.
problem which has to be resolved in the record. And so the perspective shift of your reviewers, your QA department, can go from being tasked to find problems in the record to actually take care of the problems with the product, if there are some. So yeah, you have cases where people feel, or reviewers feel, that their task is to find problems in the document. And this is not what quality assurance is made for. It's made for the product quality and not the quality of the documentation. And this is something you don't have to care about anymore. They cannot use the wrong revision. They cannot miss steps. They cannot not sign steps and tasks. All those GDP errors are completely obsolete, basically, because you cannot miss something and you cannot do the wrong thing. And you only have to check the content, not the document itself.
Sounds good. Let's shift to pillar number 4, which is the connected manufacturing. And this is around kind of integrations with your ERP, your quality management system, or your LIMS system. I mean, most systems these days operate in silos, so we don't have complete audit trails. Any kind of work in progress is a little bit inaccurate because you might need to reference another solution, and decisions aren't really made on the most up-to-date info because of that lack of connectivity. So what we can provide is native connectivity across MasterControl. And what we mean by that is our quality management system, including your documentation, your training, and quality events like non-conformances, etc., is just natively connected to our manufacturing solution. We also provide pre-built integrations for common systems like your ERP and your LIMS, and equipment with exposable endpoints. And it really does create like a digital thread that runs from the shop floor to the shop floor, giving more kind of real-time visibility, as you see here, from execution to planning and operations. Let's shift to pillar number 5, which is continuous improvement. Obviously, everybody strives for this. It brings really into itself pillars 1, 2, 3, and 4. They become the foundations for kind of dashboards and analytics and even AI-powered insights that we can provide with our deviation analyzer tool, helping surface trends, flag up risks or things that might become risks. Maybe they're not yet, but are on their way and can help with your kind of proactive decisions. And we do provide like out of the box dashboards and customizable where you can make your own. And that's to kind of help shift quality management away from being reactive. We don't want deviations just kind of worked on in isolation. As we mentioned at the beginning, it could be the same deviation being raised every time. And we don't have that kind of visibility because it's at large scale. We're not getting the right root cause down. But this pillar only kind of works when the first 4 are in place. So a connected and structured system providing digital data is kind of what makes the analytics meaningful, I guess, and what makes our AI trustworthy. On that note, we're going to jump into a quick live demo just so you can get a view of our manufacturing solution. And we'll also open up some dashboards and things as we progress. Chris, I'm pausing there just to get ready for the next bit, okay?
Yeah, sounds good, George.
Right. 2 seconds, Eric, and then we'll get the demo going. Okay, I'm going to start in 2 seconds. Okay, everybody, this is our MasterControl MX, our manufacturing excellence solution. There's a lot on the screen. We're not going to go into everything. We're really just going to kind of show you maybe a batch that's in progress. And as we go through this, we'll be kind of talking about those 4 pillars that well, 5 pillars, the 5th one being the analytics. We'll see that separately, but the first 4, your in-force process control, your smart automation, your review by exception, and your connected manufacturing we'll cover in this bit. And then we'll look at pillar 5 with some dedicated dashboards and things like that. So I've already got a production record that we're in. It's prod 00615, so MasterControl will give it its own lot number, although we can consume that. Talking about connections with pillar 4, we can bring in data from SAP, ERP, or other kind of manufacturing planning systems to automate all of this. We know the product, we have a timestamp, and we know it's 3% complete. So our operator would simply come in and progress. Now, the first thing I do want to talk about, though, is we talked about training checks. Let's imagine I'm an operator. I've been asked to come in and manufacture something. I come along and I can't. And this is one of those things we've got in. This is looking at pillar 4, that kind of connected manufacturing across documents, across training, and across quality events. So right here, I've been sent a document or I've been assigned some training, and I can't continue until I've read the document or answered a quiz or something like that. And I can actually jump directly to the training from here. We've made it very easy. But until that's done, I will not be able to progress with the manufacturing in this particular record. Now, the one we're going to go into now, I've done the training on, so we can just get stuck in or we can continue. Now, I like to think of this as my front page of my PDF or the Word file that you're filling in. We've got all the details about what we're manufacturing. We've got a percentage visibility, which is real time, so I can view that as we progress. Any signatures or anybody that gets involved will automatically be added here. And if we're referencing any documents or deviations, etc., they'll all be linked here. And we do have an activity log as well. And this is going to populate in real time as we progress, so quality can view this as we go through the production. Over here, we've got the process that we can follow And we talked about pillar one, which was enforced process control, kind of making sure that we go through these steps in the correct order. And that's kind of what we've got here. We've got these little green or teal, depends how well you are with your colors, dots. And they're kind of telling me we can do preparation in QC right now. But if I jump into process, it's locked away behind the dependency. So we are enforcing you've got to do this first. And we'll talk about pillar one a lot more shortly. This area is open though, and now we're presented with some particular fields. Now, Erik was talking about he timed the operators with the stopwatch for writing their name. I've pressed a button and it's done automatically. So we've saved 4 seconds already, okay, just by doing that. You'll save a lot more because that happens for everybody. It's always going to get the name and the date and time. Again, sticking with pillar one for this kind of prevention of errors, you'll notice we're looking for a particular range in this field. If I enter outside of that range, MasterControl will flag up, listen, you've gone outside your specified limit. And depending on how you've configured the system, if Erik is my supervisor, he could get a system email to say, listen, this particular specification has been breached. Let's have a look. Shifting to pillar 3 ever so slightly, if we click up here and review by exception, we're already listing that limit that was exceeded. So again, this will update in real time as we progress through the record. This particular field, again, going back to pillar 1, I can't continue until I enter the correct value. It's a very, what we call a hard warning. The previous field is a soft one because we might need to capture that. But this, if I don't enter 10, we can't continue. Now further, let's go back to this field here. Maybe I got distracted. I need to make a correction. Actually, the value was 95 instead of 100 or 99. It's still outside specification, but I've now captured a reason why something went wrong. And we've now got an audit trail associated with this. It's always going to be there. And if we go to the review by exception, we've now got a correction and a limit that's exceeded. So again, just kind of sticking with the pillars as we go through. Now let's do a couple more fields. We've got a couple of other things here. I have a barcode scanner right here. And this is going to talk about your kind of pillar 2 and your pillar 4, because what we're doing is we're going to scan a particular barcode. Again, this is just a kind of barcode scanner off the shelf. I have a barcode on my mobile device. What it's now doing is it's going to check, does that serial number or code match anything in our solutions? And if it does, I haven't had to transcribe this data. So again, reducing human error through that kind of smart automation at pillar 2. Did we get everything together? Yes, we did. And my colleague can provide his or her username and e-sig to say we've witnessed this. Okay, so again, very straightforward. We might have a logbook to update. We've got digital logbooks as well. Let's assume that's completed. We can sign this step up, and then we can get somebody in to verify that this particular part is complete. Let's jump back to the top ever so slightly. We're now 31%. The activity log is a lot more populated, and we've got 2 new names on our accountability page, Ben and Dioda. So all of this is kind of automatically being pulled together. Now, going back to pillar 1, we don't need to enforce a particular structure. This actually now signifies that these 3 areas could be done at the same time. We might be labeling at the same time as we're creating some packaging or something along those lines. So one operator could jump in here, have a quick look at these steps. We've applied the right labels. The temperature is -19, and we could attach files. I'm going to briefly turn my camera off because I want to show you that you can use inbuilt cameras. Capture a very flattering photograph of me and put that on. And now we've got evidence that we captured something. And again, we're signing off this particular area with my colleague over my shoulder. Let's move on to extra stuff. Erik talked about calculations as we were going through those first 5 pillars. Let's show you those. If you've had to work durations out in the past, you know you're looking at a clock, or as Erik walked around with a stopwatch, you might have one of those. I press a button, it captures it down to the second. And down here, we've got some particular values. Let's enter another one, and the calculation is worked out automatically. So again, going back to that kind of enforced process control, preventing errors, we're actually building in here those preventative measures so that the operators are removed from these high risk, low value data entry parts. Now, QC is open as well. You might have a quality review checklist to look through at the end, like, did we pass this? Did we fail this? If we did fail this, then we've got the ability to launch a form. So talking about that connected manufacturing pillar number 4, I could raise a deviation from here. The deviation team is notified. It's my 5th of 2026. That's not too bad considering we're in April. Probably a lie. There's probably stuff that's not been noticed, but that's my 5th one. We've got a link to it. And again, we jump to review by exception. We've now got form. Now, rather than me completing the entire record, I'm going to jump out and go to this one, which was 100% complete. So I've been through all of the steps. My accountability page is updated. I've got documents. I've got a kappa and a deviation linked. We've got a fully populated activity log, and we're 100% complete. And then we can go to a more populated review by exception area. We'd corrected 2 steps. Perfect. Let's click on it. Okay, so we entered 45. It was actually 49. Perfect. We've got visibility of that correction. Let's have a look here. So again, what we're moving here, guys, is I'm not having to go through page by page. This is what Erik was talking about. Like, it can really reduce the release time just because we're focusing on what you should be looking at. Any particular attachments, that's just a barcode. And then we've got any pass-fail actions. We put the wrong label on, we raise the deviation. We failed something, we raised the non-conformance. And then we've got 4 limits that we exceeded. So we already know about 1. The temperature was wrong as well. And we've got a table where we've captured other values. We were expecting between -15 and -5. And we had a -3 and a -16. So again, this is kind of looking at pillar 3, your review by exception. And as I mentioned, as we went through that, you can surface good things as well. If there's something entirely critical to your process, when you develop this batch record or production record that you go through, you can simply press a button, and even if it's okay, it will be listed here. Maybe I always want to see who witnessed that the tools were gathered. And maybe I always want to look at the automatic calculation. Even though I know it's working, it's been validated, it's correct, I just want that kind of last glance at it. Now, I'm not saying you go back to reviewing every line, because that's not the point of review by exception. But if there are critical points, then we can cater for that as well. Erik, just before I move on to pillar 5, which is the continuous improvement, anything you would add around what we've just shown from a live demo perspective?
Yeah, for one, you mentioned it yourself, the phase steps who are displayed in any case, where there are very few use cases where this is honestly necessary. Most cases which have been reviewed with 4 or 6 eyes in the past are reviewed that often because something happened in the past. There was a kappa, there was a finding, there was an audit response, there was whatever. And this is why you implemented that workflow. And now you have to check it twice or 3 times because you have to make extra sure that everything is okay there. The system will do that for you. There are very, very, very few use cases. I'm not saying there are none. I don't know all the processes in the world, obviously. But there are very few use cases where you have to review steps anyway, no matter of the result. The only thing I confirm which has to be reviewed in most cases all the time, if you need proof of a label, for example, take a photo in the shop floor. the system won't check the content of the photo. So if you by accident take a photo of the shop floor or the ceiling, there will be a photo of the ceiling attached to a batch record. That's obviously something you want to review, but this
Yeah.
will be highlighted as an attachment anyway. So you don't
Yep.
need that specific step. So what I want to say to make it shorter, I'm sometimes a little bit wordy, I know that. Trust the system. It comes validated and it will tell you what went wrong. You can
Yep.
allow those soft limits you mentioned, yeah, with the warning, and it will be highlighted in the review by exception. You can reject the value and they cannot even proceed if it's out of spec. The level of control is up to you to decide. And whatever you decide is not okay will be highlighted. There's no way around that. And so you can and you should question yourself, why do I do that? Why do I have a second and the third pair of eyes in this step? Why is that? And maybe the reason disappears because you're not doing it in paper anymore, because it is controlled now. And this is one of the biggest benefits of review by exception. You don't have to review what obviously has been okay.
Yeah. I think I completely agree. Best practice, you shouldn't really have anything there. But I know some people take their time to trust. I know you said trust the system, but it's kind of there, as you know, to help you in the transition process. But completely agree, 100%. Best practice is you probably wouldn't need anything in there, other than your perfect example of, did George accidentally take a photo of the ceiling or the floor instead of the labels? So thank you for that, Erik. I'm just going to move on to the final pillar, which is our continuous improvement, looking at the kind of dashboards and things like that. We do provide some dashboards out of the box, as we mentioned, Erik, that there's kind of out of the box. There's also configurable. This one here is a configurable one that I have created just to give me some visibility across what's being raised. I can, for example, enter a particular lot number or product that we're making, and then I can get visualizations of where we are with these lots. Like we've got 129 in process. Probably not correct figures. It's a demo system, so please don't judge our data. We tend to kind of start these things and move them on. And then you've got different visibility of this data as well, even down to where are we with a particular product, and we can color code the data so you can see how long things have been sitting there. In addition, if you're capturing figures and you want to be looking at the trends or your peaks and your troughs of temperatures, pressures, etc., all of those values we talked about with the connected manufacturing and the smart automation pillar 2 and pillar 3, I think it is, we can fully bring those details in from your sensors and then display them on these particular charts as well. My temperature is perfect. It's where I want it to be. If it goes into the red, we could set some kind of system notification up called a pulse, where an email goes out, and then we're just looking at, did we go over our max mins or averages across
Let me
these
add
particular values?
something. Let me
Yeah.
add something there real quick, because this was important to me in my former role. You can set up this alarm even if it's not reaching the limit in the record, what I mentioned earlier in the webinar. So you can set an alarm to before the value hits your limits. So this insights here is able to trend and track your data without having an impact to your actual record, and without waiting for a step to fail. So if you want the alert already, if you're like 10% off the upper and or lower limit, you can get that trigger before things go sideways.
That's a good shout out, sir, because that's a very good early warning system to let you know, hang on, you're not quite in trouble, but you might be kind of creeping closer to that. So yeah, definitely appreciate that. And the kind of final one I would like to show is around, we talk about deviations and things. We talked about kappas and things being raised. If you wanted to start tracking and trending how many deviations have been raised, and again, speaking to your point, Eric, I've got an amber here on this chart, which might be, listen, we're getting close to the red, but then I've got down here how many deviations we've raised weekly, with my average working out at 1.8. Even though we've got some high events there, the average is actually 1.8 deviations per week. Then I could graduate that to monthly or even quarterly, or we can start looking at kind of when these things were raised, looking at what sites are impacted, what the categories of these deviations are. And if you're doing some kind of root cause, kind of basic corrective actions in that process, we could get visual visibility of what's kind of happening there as well, even down to splitting by site. Like we've had 10 issues, site 10, site 1, sorry. We've had 6 on site 2. So definitely for me, the visualization is good. If you want, you can still have spreadsheets and things like that in here. And if this is something you're interested in, Eric, you know yourself, I could schedule this to kind of send to you on a Monday and a Friday, and you could receive that in a CSV, Excel, or a particular PDF. So just to kind of summarize everybody, we had the kind of four main pillars, with the fifth continuous improvement feeding off of all of them. Remember, the fifth only kind of comes into effect when the other 4 are in place. That's your enforced process control, your smart automation, your review by exception, your connected manufacturing, and all of those feed into pillar 5, which is your dashboard, your analytics, your continuous improvement, and that kind of helps turn the data into decisions.
Don't underestimate the benefit of having the data reportable, even if you never thought about reporting a certain piece of information. If you have substances which you may produce to stock in a preparation process, or if you're med device manufacturer and you have sub-assemblies, core assemblies you produce to stock and use in later phases, and something comes up, you can report on things you never cared about in the past. So like what were the serial numbers of my subcomponents for all the instruments where a value or a test failed? And you can find the common factor in a possible problem which occurs at one time. So even if you are in a firefighting stage or in a problem resolving stage, the investigation is way faster if you don't have to browse records. The data is available. Even if you didn't have the dashboard available, just create it and search for the data you want to see. And if you want to delete it afterwards or create a new dashboard for you to control those numbers, whatever, but it's reportable. It's searchable, reportable, and transparent, and this is a massive benefit.
Thanks, Eric. So that was the live demo. Thank you again, Eric, for helping me through that with your kind of experience having configured and implemented. I really do appreciate that. But let's kind of wrap up a little bit. I mean, right first time isn't just a technology outcome, okay? It's obviously a culture that's enabled by the right tools. The pillars are a system, not really a checklist. Like you're not going, oh, we've got pillar 1, we've got pillar 2. Each one kind of reinforces the other. It's kind of holding up the roof. Without one, they could all kind of fall and collapse. If you enforce your process control, there's going to be fewer errors entering the record. If you automate data capture, the record's going to be more accurate and complete. You move to review by exception, releases a lot more faster, and you have more confidence in the process. And if you connect your systems, everybody's working from the same truth. There's no transcription errors or anything like that. And when you start analyzing your data, as Eric just kind of referenced, you can stop the same problem from happening twice, or even stop the problem from happening if you're kind of setting those figures up to alert you before it becomes a particular issue. So where do we fit? Well, MasterControl is purpose-built for regulated environments in the GXP space. We're cloud-based, rapidly deployed. There's a low validation burden. We help you with our validation excellence tool and validation on demand. And it's designed to empower your operators, not overwhelm or even replace them. We did reference that earlier. It's scalable and flexible by design. Start with one line or site. We'll hold your hand. We get you up and running, and then you can expand it to the global network. And we will always kind of be there for you to ensure your project is a success. Now, let's move to a Q&A. I think we had a few questions come in, Erik. I'll gather those and see if there's any that we can particular answer. One of them, Erik, and there's only a couple. As you've configured the system and you've maybe talked to hundreds of people or demoed and kind of been your solutions consultant to people who are looking for an electronic manufacturing solution, what are they typically hoping to achieve? And I mean, I can start off with that one in that I know they're looking for quicker product release. But is there anything else, Erik, that you think people who want an electronic manufacturing solution are hoping to achieve?
It depends who you ask. Management wants to see a return on their investment. The subject matter experts and the product responsible users in operations want the corrected first time approach. Often I see operators being quite critical because I did that for 15 years. I don't need the software to tell me what to do. That's just human and understandable. But then again, it's not to control or to replace an operator or to tell him what to do. It's to make their life easier so that they can concentrate on the job. So in the end, there are a lot of motivations why you need a system like that. And what your trigger is to listen to that webinar right now, that's up to you. But we saw and we heard today, it's a whole spectrum of reasons why to go there. If it's just by principle, we are in 2026, we don't want to work on paper anymore. If it's from management, the money we want to have in return on our investment, we want quicker release times. Or if it's my product quality, if it's my data transparency, I want to know what's going on. I want to improve over time. Or I became aware that my process is so complex that cannot be normal. Why is my process so complex? Simplify your process through trusting the system and through automating data data breaches which are there. If somebody reads something and types it down, writes it down, or even types it down, it's data breach already. So you can eliminate error sources. It's a whole spectrum of reasons why to go there. And I don't see a single reason not to do it. The question is just when will you start?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. We've had another one come in, and I think it's more around the review by exception and the batch release. Somebody said, our QA team currently spends several days reviewing each batch record end to end before release. How does the RBE work in practice? And I think what they've kind of clarified, who configures the exception thresholds? And how do you ensure nothing critical is missed if you're moving away from a full page review? Does that make sense, Erik?
Yeah, I think so. Like you yourself mentioned earlier, MasterControl will help you in implementation and going live with your at least first batch record, and even after that, continue supporting you. So you have your critical pieces of information. Your subject matter expert who created your paper batch record form knows what's important. The QA colleagues you have who are reviewing it right now know very well what steps they always look into first, because usually there's something going on there. So you already know where your high risk values or phases in the process are. So it's really depending on your production process and your complexity on your process. There may be processes there the order is maybe not irrelevant, but not that important compared to the flexibility to be able to do something in the wrong order if it makes sense in your use case. But the decision, what is that important that I allow it or not in the review by exception, it won't be final in your first iteration of your first digital batch record. You will improve over time. You will learn to work with the system. You don't have to be perfect in the first iteration. It's about progress and getting better and getting there and learning to use the tool. So you know your risks already. And worst case is that you do your first one too strict and you learn that you can become more relaxed. So initially, I always would recommend to be stricter in your first iteration, not to have actual issues with your product, because you're allowed too much. Yeah. But yeah, go from there.
Perfect. One final question. And if you do have any other further questions watching this, please, and if we didn't get to it during the session, please contact us and we will look into it. But a kind of final question to finish on, Erik, and I'll have a go at answering it and then you can step in. And somebody's asked, what should our teams be thinking about as best practices as we look into a solution like this? And I think just kind of further to add what Erik was saying there about be strict the first time, the one thing I would say is don't go into this thinking you're going to replicate the paper process electronically 100% the same, because you're not going to benefit from the electronic system if you do that. We don't really want paper on glass, as we would call it. Maybe when you first start off, that is what your first draft will be like, as Erik mentioned, but you'll quickly learn that there's some benefits don't kind of translate when you copy it exactly from the paper. So to me, I guess what should they be thinking about? The first thing, Erik, would be what steps could be removed or combined to maybe further streamline your process. Anything you would add to that?
Yeah, there are certain sections which can be completely eliminated. So you often see calculate that value and transfer the result to page 25, because this value will be used later on. This whole browsing, so those things completely disappear. So, and we had that in my former role, that there were instructions, because they've been copy pasted, because we did paper on glass with our first iteration, where it said, enter that value somewhere else, and the operators were like, I'm in the software here. Why am I supposed to enter the value there? And we changed that. And one example I like to mention is the infamous equipment used in this batch table. Usually this is in the cover page or in one of the first pages to make it easy to find which equipment has been used in this batch record, but it's not required to have a table in the beginning of a paper, of a PDF. It's just required to have that information. You can record the equipment which has been used at the point of use in the record, and with insights, for example, create a dashboard from both directions. You can search for the batch number and see all the equipments used. You search for the equipment and see all the batches it has been used with and when. So if you have an equipment which has an issue, in calibration, you see it was out of spec, and you want to find out which batches have been produced while it may have been out of spec. It's a two-click insight search, and you have your data available. You don't need tables on a cover page to have that. So you can get rid of whole sections thinking digital. And this is one of the first things you can get rid of, unnecessary chapters.
Well, thank you, Erik. I know you and I could probably talk a lot more, but we're going to draw a close there. As I said, any further questions, please just ask us. There will be details to contact us. And Erik, thank you very much again for your time. And we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you very much.
Welcome.